Welcome to Raiders Roundtable, presented by America First Credit Union. I'm JT, the Hall of Famer. Eric Allen is here as always. Special edition of the show. There'll be a press conference. Pete Carroll was relieved of his head coaching responsibilities. EA, we were suspecting something like that could happen today. It's happening around the entire NFL. Your big picture on the move.
Well, we always know the Monday after the season's over, there's a lot of transition, a lot of movement in this league, and I had to make sure today, before we came on, that I kind of walked around the facility because these guys are guys who are professionals. The coaches here have done as good a job as they can do, but I just wanted to make sure that, you know, it's just not something to where everyone's excited about people leaving. People are losing their jobs today, and I just wanted to make sure that I was here and I kind of looking the guys in the eyes, so when we get on here, it's just truth. It's a sad day, right, for people in this building. This is a tremendous place to play, to coach, and for Coach Pete and the group not to have another opportunity is a little bit sad, but we move on.
Let's take a look at the statement from Mark Davis, who he put out. The Las Vegas Raiders have relieved Pete Carroll of his duties as head coach. We appreciate and wish him and his family all the best moving forward. General Manager John Spytek will lead all football operations in close collaboration with Tom Brady, including the search for the club's next head coach. Together, they will guide football decisions with a shared focus on leadership, culture, and alignment with the organization's long-term vision and goals. Once again, Mark Davis, we understand the role of Tom Brady. I think we're going to learn more about that today in John Spytek.
Without a doubt. And it's very important that Mr. Davis kind of let everybody know that these are the guys who are going to be in control. And that's the first thing we have to have. We have to have, you know, the accountability, right? And it falls under this leadership of the GM and Tom Brady are going to be out there using all their experience to try and find someone who fits perfectly with this organization, with the Raiders' soul and the Raiders' mantra all in hand. So you know that this Raiders organization has been built on a tradition of winning and of taking chances, of not being afraid and intimidated, to have a great coach like Pete Carroll come here and then it's not working out and then give him a respectful opportunity to move on. So you have to have your hats off to Mr. Mark Davis, but it's a time for this football team, this organization to move ahead.
We were both impressed with the fact that Pete Carroll was able to address the team.
Yes.
That does not happen around the NFL. He gave his words of wisdom on the way out about competition, what he hopes for this team going forward, and the players lined up afterwards, and all hugged him because they cared that much for Pete Carroll. A class move by this organization. As we bring in Paul Gutierrez from Raiders.com. And Paul, you've been down in the locker room today. You're getting some of the players' reaction from early this morning. What are they saying?
Yeah, guys, in talking with the guys in the locker room earlier today, it was interesting because, like you mentioned, there was a professionalism, there was a bittersweet feeling because there's no doubt that Pete Carroll and his staff tried the best that they obviously tried to do. But at the end of the day, a 3-14 record is a 3-14 record. So it was time to move forward. And in talking with the guys in the locker room, the one trend that I kept getting from a lot of the guys in there was going forward, everybody has to be on the same page. And when you combine that with the statement that was put out by Mark Davis, it tells you that maybe there wasn't a lot of guys on the same page. Was it the right page? Was it the wrong page? There was a lot of not confusion so much, but just trying to pull in different directions. And when you have a guy like a Pete Carroll, a potential future Hall of Fame coach who has the pelts on the wall, and I said it at the time when he was hired, he has the pelts, he has the experience, he has everything that needs to make this thing work. It just didn't. So now when you have that statement that Mark Davis put out, a brilliantly written and poignant statement, because it definitely tells you, okay, everybody needs to be going in the right direction here, the same direction, if nothing else, and you go from there. So that was the theme that I felt in the locker room was, they tried their best. It didn't work out, but I don't think you could have ended a bitter season any better than it happened yesterday.
Yeah, without a doubt. When you talk about Pete Carroll and his lasting legacy over this league and the style of defense and the positive energy that he had, what did the guys say about that energy and they're gonna remember most about Coach Pete?
Yeah, it was that he gave his trust in them, and that when they were able to get on the field, they felt like he had their backs. And, when we saw it, and that's one thing that Pete came in with, and I remembered it when I covered him at USC for the LA Times 2 decades ago, was that this was the energy, the positivity, the happy-go-lucky Uncle Pete that was coming into town. And then it as we talked about it midseason, guys, it became, okay, well, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Those things just did not translate into wins. And to a man in that locker room and on the coaching staff, they would have great practices, but it would not show up on Sundays or Mondays or Thursdays or whatever day you would have. So a change needed to be made, and it has been made. So now with that statement and with the guys in the locker room understanding this is a business, but again, I agree with you, JT, to allow Pete to go in there and meet the team after the news came out and after the media was in there too. It reminded me of the very first coach I covered on this team, Norv Turner, back in 2005. I remember he came into that small media workroom in Alameda, JT, if you remember that room.
Yeah.
And he came in there and he sat there and it was like a round table discussion with all the beat writers on the beat at the time in the Bay Area. And it was just a classy move for a classy individual.
If we look back at the season, it was rough. I mean, the stats were against the Raiders all year long. And as we look at some of the stats here, they allowed the most sacks in a season. The offensive rank was 30th overall. The defense, that grade of last. Special teams was really a struggle from the beginning to the end of the year. So, Paul, looking back on this season, where do you think it went wrong? Because they won the first game against New England, at New England, and look at their record. And then after that, they began a slide, and it got worse and worse, and they just didn't seem to be able to hit the ripcord and slow it down a bit. It just got worse and worse, and I think a lot of players fought hard to try to turn it around, but it never came around.
It never came around. And appearing on this show every week during the season, I remember after the Washington game saying this, and a lot of people in the building were laughing. It's like, okay, they've hit rock bottom. It can't get worse than this. And then they go to Indianapolis. It can't get worse than this. Then you go to Kansas City. It can't. So that's not making light of a moment, other than that's just the tenor, the tone of the season. And I don't think there was anybody that was more surprised by what was going on than Pete Carroll himself. Because as he came in and he said, look, all I know is winning 10 games. And we're going to win a bunch of games. I don't care who hears it. I don't know if they overestimated the roster, if injuries played a big part in it. Because as guys, we talked about it from the jump, it was a very top-heavy roster. And if you suffered an injury at a key position here or there, whether it was at left tackle, whether it was at tight end, whether it was at quarterback, defensive end, the lack of depth, of quality NFL starting depth anyway, it reared its head. And that to me is where things kind of went sideways. And at that point, you're trying to figure out, okay, well, now you've got differing theories here. You've got an established coach with all those pelts on the wall that wants to win now and needs to win now because that's all he knows. And then you've got the vision of a first-time ever GM who paid all those dues, more than 2 decades of paying dues, to sit in that seat for the first time in John Spytek. And you just wondered, okay, well, when does that vision kind of coalesce? When does it come together? And unfortunately, maybe it came together in that final game. But again, if you're looking at it from a positive standpoint, it can only get better from here.
Without a doubt. And when we come to most of the games, it was kind of a lack of experience at some points, the lack of consistency and complementary football that we've seen over and over. So you can have the first half, the running game was great, but we missed a couple tackles. So there was never really any consistency or that such. So how do you think the next coach will come in and have to deal with that?
Yeah, it comes in that everybody has to be on the same page. Whether that, but beyond that, it has to be the right page, right? Because you had a couple of staffs ago, everybody's on the same page, just wasn't the right page, and the Raiders moved on. So what that new coaching staff has to come in, they have to be in lockstep with the general manager, John Spytek, because as Bill Parcells said a long time ago, if you want me to cook, at least let me get some of the groceries along the way. They have to have some of the same mentality that way. Tom Brady obviously is going to have a bigger role, at least that's what the statement says. And that's, I don't think it's any surprise that he's always kind of been involved here. Mark Davis said it himself during training camp when he sat down with Baron Davis in that same studio. So they all have to be in lockstep with what they want, what the vision is, and then you go from there. But you're absolutely right. I think maybe one game did we see all three phases of the game play together, and that might have been the win against Tennessee at home.
Yeah.
Other than maybe the opener.
Yeah.
The opener, they peaked in the opener at New England. My favorite picture the whole time of the whole season was afterwards waiting outside the Raider locker room and seeing Robert Kraft looking for Mark Davis to congratulate him on the win. I think I'll tweet that photo out later, guys.
You have to.
Yeah, well, let's hear from a couple of players. We begin with Trey Tucker.
Pete gave everything, like I said, most respect to him. Very great guy. Like I said, as a person, tremendous. So I think as an organization, I think, we have a lot of different views of things, and like I said, a lot of good young players that we can build off of, and we'll see what we can do. Everybody needs to be on the same page, and I think that comes with having a coach, that we can all win and build stability that way, because all coaches have their different styles, I've had Josh, AP, and Pete, and they're all different, but they all have similar things. So I think for us, it's just whoever we get, the whole staff, everyone, we all have to be on the same page. And I think that'll translate to some wins for us, and that's when you really start to have fun with it.
I know we all agree the level of respect, EA, that locker room has for this coach is really impressive.
It is.
Even though the coach wasn't retained. You don't see that around the league much.
You really don't. And you see sometimes when a coach leaves in a season like this that had, just double-digit losses, very difficult, that guys scatter. And this football team has not scattered from its head coach. I hope they're able to take a lot from Pete and how he prepared himself and what he expected into their future. And I think they'll be successful. Just didn't work out, JT. I'm not sure if it was just the performance. Obviously, the performance of the quarterback position was vital, and us not being able to put a lot of games together. But he was affected by the offensive line's ups and downs and injuries. So a lot of things here to be fixed, but I think Pete did as well as he could do with what he had.
Paul, you've been around a lot of these rosters. You know the players and their body language. A lot of time players think they let down the coach when the coach isn't retained. What did you see today?
Yeah, I saw mostly that bittersweet feeling. That guys knew exactly that they tried their best, and at the end of the year, it's still a business. The one thing I will say about that locker room, though, guys, is I've covered a lot of these teams. 2005 was my first year on the beat, way back when, for the Sacramento Bee, through the CSN Bay Area days, through ESPN to now with the Raiders. And I've seen a lot of locker rooms get lost. This locker room never really left Pete Carroll. There was some wobbly moments there, definitely, because you're not winning. You're not getting the fruits of victory, as Pete would always say. You're not getting rewarded with wins at the end of the day, even though you're working so hard. And yet his positivity is what kind of kept that locker room together. And I know fans don't want to hear about that because it didn't lead to wins, but again, it's weird. I wrote about it on Raiders.com about the way everything kind of ended on Sunday with somebody like Daniel Carlson going into free agency with a 60-yard game-winning field goal, with Michael Mayer having a clutch catch down the stretch, with a lot of young guys, Tonka Hemingway having 2 sacks, Tyree Wilson with 2 sacks, including a safety. There was some positive things to build on there that had Pete Carroll lost that locker room, none of that would have even been possible going into that finale.
Let's hear from running back Ashton Genty.
I think just holding guys accountable, especially when they need it, knowing your players well enough to just, keep that standard up. And obviously, they're the head coach, so they got to be a leader, for sure.
I can't talk as highly as I have about him. I got to continue.
You've done a great,
The way he's handled all this is such a learning experience. We saw the scrimmage yards and the beating he took this year, but every opportunity, Paul, when you stood in front of him, home and on the road, he handled this well, and it was a very tough physical season on Ashton Genty.
Yeah, and mentally, probably even more so mentally, guys, because this is a guy that had lost more games this year with the Raiders than he had lost in his previous 2 years at Boise State. And I know Boise State is a Mountain West program. It's not one of the SEC or the Big Five college programs out there. But he's not used to it. And you could see him trying to handle it as the season went on, and the little things here and there would pop out. But just in terms of his pure production, I mean, he was 25 yards shy of 1,000 on the season, despite consistently getting hit in the backfield. He still led all rookie running backs in rushing. He set a new Raiders rookie standard for scrimmage yards. So if at the end of the day you look at it and you go, okay, this is a guy that had 7 rushing yards against the Cowboys, I believe, and he still got that close to 1,000, and he's still a pillar for this franchise going forward. And again, as I wrote, hint to the next coaching staff, Put him in space. Let him create.
What about thinking about that next head coach? Give me some of the names that you've been hearing or is going to be able to come in here and work with Ashton and Brock Bowers and hopefully Max Crosby and some of these young players who we saw perform yesterday.
Yeah, one of the names, and again, do they want to go defensive-minded? You want to go offensive-minded? Clint Kubiak is a big name from Seattle because they're doing some things, and they've got the #1 seed in the NFC. Robert Saleh, he's already been a head coach, so he's got a little bit of gravitas to him on the defensive side of the ball. But I don't know if the Raiders want to go that way or if they want to go more offensive-minded because of where the draft pick is. You have the #1 overall pick. You control the draft, and there's something – lack of a better word, something sexy about that, guys. If you have the #1 overall pick, you kind of dictate what everybody else is going to do. And that doesn't mean you have to use that #1 pick. You can use that to trade and get more capital, and especially depending upon which way you're going to go. It should be a very attractive job for no other reason than this. You have the #1 pick. You can go whichever way you want as long as you're in lockstep with John Spytek and Tom Brady going forward, and Mark Davis obviously too. But, it's going to be real intriguing to see this year because you don't necessarily have to use it on the quarterback. But if you fall in love with that quarterback, well, then you hope that the coach also loves it too. And then everybody's in the same mind here because, as I said, I covered this team for a while, and I've seen Mark Davis oversee 2 deconstructions and reconstructions since he took over for his father in 2011. Guess what's happened in each of those situations? In the first deconstruction, reconstruction, they were in the playoffs within 4 years. In the second one under John Gruden, they were in the playoffs within 3. And now here we are again. So we'll see exactly which way this new coach, whichever box he checks, decides to go.
Let's talk about the quarterback room. It has not worked out in quite some time at the quarterback position. And free agent money has been spent, a lot of it, on quarterbacks. But as you mentioned, Paul, the #1 pick overall typically gets you a quarterback if you stay with that pick overall. So with Geno this year, I thought Geno was very loyal to Pete. Pete was very loyal to Geno. It did not work out at all. We saw Aiden try to get it going. Kenny Pickett struggled at times here. So whatever the Raiders want to do, I want to get your opinion on how they got to get the quarterback right to fill up Allegiant Stadium and be explosive again.
You got to be successful. You got to move the ball. You got to score points. And again, tell me who the coach is before we start diving into who the quarterback is. Because if you tell me, okay, Kurt Cignetti from Indiana, okay, well, Fernando Mendoza, okay, here we go. Is it Cliff Kingsbury is going to come in? That's another name that is probably going to get thrown out there. We know there was some hard feelings a couple years ago here, there too. But at the end of the day, what's going to make it sizzle is success. And having, been a UNLV alum and seeing the Runnin' Rebels when they were on top of the world in the early 90s and now going to games and seeing maybe 5,000 people in Thomas and Mack, Vegas is a city that's going to support a winner, something that's exciting. So if you have an NFL team in town and you have an exciting offense and there's a sizzle to it, you saw it when the team first got here and then first opened the doors to the fans in 2021 when they actually went to the playoffs and we had all the madness that happened that year as well. That's what's going to make this happen. At the end of the day, it's success. But in Las Vegas, you also have to have a certain sizzle to it as well. So if it is Fernando Mendoza, there's plenty of built-in marketing opportunities there, as well as being a Latino Heisman Trophy winner. Hello, let's get Jim Plunkett on the phone. Things like that are really going to appeal to Raider fans.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that it should be Fernando Mendoza, but why shouldn't it be?
Yeah, for sure. You're talking about the Heisman Trophy. We're having an opportunity, I think, everyone in these playoff games to kind of see him. And then this week, it'll be Indiana and Oregon. So we'll see the top 2 quarterbacks kind of go after it. But even if you do get a young quarterback, I mean, do you expect him to start right away? Is there going to be a bridge quarterback that we're talking about who's maybe here or who's not here? I think that's one of the primary issues the head coach needs to kind of focus on also. Yes, you may have this young quarterback, but do we have someone who can line up under center right now and be the bridge to that young quarterback?
Well, I think it would be wild to say this, but Aiden O'Connell being a bridge wouldn't be the worst thing, especially the way he kind of showed yesterday. I know he didn't throw for a lot of yards, and I heard James Jones yelling at you on the show yesterday after the game, EA. But he's been there, and he has some tape. So I don't know if that's fair enough to look at this guy who's relatively young in the NFL, but made his season debut in the season finale because of the broken wrist suffered in the preseason. But they probably do have to go out there if it is a quarterback. Again, tell me who the head coach is. Tell me what their philosophy is. And guess what? One of the guys making this decision is arguably, well, I'll just say it, he's the greatest quarterback ever, right? Tom Brady. So he's going to have a major say in what that quarterback room looks like going forward now as well, whether they need to go sign another veteran to kind of be that guy. But if you're using a number 1 overall pick on a quarterback, I don't know how he's not that guy. I mean, we're way past the days of Carson Palmer being able to sit and learn, of John Elway, learning baptism by fire back in the early '80s. And I know I'm dating myself here with that, guys, but it's one of those things where if it is a number 1 pick, you want him out there, but you can't just throw him out there because you have all these other holes to fill, especially on the offensive line. And so if you see, and with free agency happening before the draft, if you see the team starting to go all in on the offensive line, that's pretty much a clue that, I think they're going to go quarterback.
All right, in a few moments, we're going to get to John Spytek. I will tell you, this will be a completely new football team.
It will.
All right, the offensive line, store-bought. They're going to get new players in here, looking for a 1 wide receiver. The defense, depending on who's coming back, there will be a focus on the personnel to get the right players here quickly. And fortunately, the Raiders have a lot of money in free agency. They got great draft picks at the top of every round. As Paul mentioned earlier, they could trade back. They can do things. They could trade up. I'm a big fan of getting 2 first-round picks if you have a second or a third and you want to move up to get that great offensive lineman to pair with a quarterback. There's going to be a lot of changes around here, and hopefully all for the better. As Mark Davis put out a statement and talked about it, it will be Tom Brady and John Spytek will have the opportunity to vet this whole process. Like the other coaches, it didn't work out, but they're going to have a new opportunity with some really sharp people in the room, led by Tom Brady. And I know from talking to Raider Nation on the radio and those who really support Tom Brady, this is his moment. Now he gets the opportunity to say, I've been here, I'm a minority owner, I'm going to get an opportunity to pull the trigger and get it done, and I'm looking forward to seeing that.
I think that's an important issue, guys, to have someone who's in the decision-making space has the opportunity to get a young quarterback. And once you get that young quarterback, it's an opportunity for your franchise to reset.
Yeah, we're going to go downstairs. Here's the GM, John Spytek.
For coming today on short notice. This morning, ownership and myself met with Coach Carroll. After a lot of discussions, we made a decision to go in a different direction. We informed Coach Carroll of that this morning. I want to thank Coach Carroll from the ownership perspective and from my personal perspective as well. He was a great partner. In my first year in this job, he worked tirelessly to give Raider Nation the team and the outcomes and the results that they wanted and deserve. He was a wonderful person to deal with for me personally on a day-to-day basis. And I'm just very grateful to have had the opportunity to work with him, a great coach like him, for a year. And this organization, the ownership, myself, wish him nothing but the best in the future. We're truly grateful for his efforts. I also want to make it extremely clear, too, that I bear a ton of responsibility for the outcome of the season and our record. This isn't on any one person, and really I don't want anyone to think that anyone deserves more responsibility than me in that. It's something I'm very aware of. I think about all the time and am determined to get right. And, the accountability should start and stop with me, and that needs to be said. I want to thank all of our coaches, all of the players, all of the support staff, that despite our record, they worked tirelessly, they poured their hearts into it, they never wavered, and it was great to see that culminate with a win yesterday. They battled to really the final play of the season, and I think that was a true revelation of their character, and they all should have a lot to be proud of. We have a massive opportunity in front of us this offseason to set this organization, this franchise on a course for success and provide the results that the Raider Nation and the Las Vegas community deserves and expects. We intend to tack it full on. The work has already begun. I think we're all aware of all the resources that Mark and ownership group have given to us. Obviously, there's the draft. We have capital. We have one of the greatest buildings, if not the greatest building in the NFL. There's a lot to be excited about here, and it is going to be my responsibility to lead this up and set this organization on a course of sustained success. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have.
John, just curious, having the first pick overall in the draft, how much did that kind of play into this to do sort of a full reset with your coach and whoever it is that you guys end up drafting?
Just because we have the first pick in the draft, that didn't carry a lot of weight in the decision that we made. I think we have a great opportunity to build this franchise the right way now. We never want to be in this spot again. I never thought I would be in this spot, but we got to be real with where we're at. We have to understand the opportunity that we have in front of us, and our focus and our vision is on everything going forward now.
John, with your first pick as an NFL GM, you selected Ashton Jeanty. Can you give an evaluation of how you feel his rookie season went? And also, what do you think are some steps you feel like you need to take to maximize his potential as you continue to evolve the team?
Yeah, I'm proud of Ashton. It wasn't an easy season for him. He showed up every day and worked. He showed up every game and competed. He was always available for his teammates. He was an exemplary worker. And, we've got to do a better job surrounding him with a lot of players that can help him too. And, his success, I know there's been a lot of narratives out there that he didn't have the season that, maybe he deserved or you would expect from the 6th overall pick. Well, that's fine, but it's not just Ashton. There's 10 other people that are out there with him, and it's our job to put a great group of guys around him to help him realize his potential.
John, 2 questions. Number 1, do you expect your new coach to have the autonomy to pick his own staff, or do you think that you would have input in that as well?
I want to turn that over to the coach. I mean, we're going to have a lot of great conversations about who, why, where. There's going to be a lot of great football conversations, but my belief has always been, you give a lot of the responsibility to the head coach to hire the staff that he wants to hire. It's who reports to him and who he works with every day.
In moving forward, would you expect on a more regular basis to have Tom in the building physically?
I have a great relationship with Tom. We're in constant communication daily, and whether he's in the building or not, our conversations are very much similar. So I always love seeing him. He's somebody I've learned a lot from every time I've had a chance to sit in a room with him, but we've had a lot of great phone conversations as well.
You mentioned building around Ashton. When you build out your offensive line moving forward, how much will you take into consideration the experience in those offensive linemen?
We're gonna attack this entire offseason with an extremely open mind, and anybody that can help bolster that offensive line and do the job required will be considered. We have a lot of capital, cap space. We've got some elite draft picks, and adding a veteran presence in there or two would be helpful, but not necessarily an absolute necessity. We're not going to begin with the end in mind.
John, excuse me. Could you describe Brady's level of involvement in the decision to part ways with Pete Carroll?
I would just say that, everything was evaluated, as the season went and over the last couple days. And I talk to him almost every day. And we have a great relationship. He trusts me. We tell each other the truth. And we just had a lot of conversations about it, and ultimately we made the decision that this was in the best interest of the Raiders.
Just a follow-up question. Did you feel like, because I know Pete mentioned earlier how in the beginning with your relationship, guys kind of didn't see eye to eye on certain things, which can happen. But I was wondering, did you feel like the two of you were operating on different timelines at time, and how did that relationship develop over the course of the year?
I wouldn't say that we were operating on different timelines, and I've also never been in a relationship where we both agree all the time. I mean, ask my wife, she'll tell you that. Anything that we didn't always agree on, we talked about. I had a great relationship. He was always in my office. I was always in his office. We collectively sat in the space together until we felt like we could make the best decision in the Raiders. And we didn't obviously get everything right. And again, put the responsibility on me. I've got to do a better job on that standpoint. But Coach and I had a great relationship from my perspective. And because we didn't agree all the time, had nothing to do with. I don't know actually a great relationship where everybody agrees all the time. I think that would actually be counterproductive.
John, obviously once.
Okay, sorry, behind the phone.
Once the offseason commences, obviously a lot of teams around the league will inquire about Max Crosby in a trade. Do you view him as a untradeable, untouchable player moving forward once the offseason starts?
I have a lot of respect for Max and how much he loves to play the game. And I've had the opportunity in the last several weeks to spend a lot of time with Max. And I think it's been well documented that he didn't love the idea of not playing football. And I think you always want that from your best players. In fact, I think that's why they're your best players. So I love Max. He embodies what a Raider is. I've been pretty upfront with that from the day that I sat up here almost a year ago. And I continue to believe that.
Hey, John, everything happened so quick last year with your hiring and Pete. So this is kind of the first time in your position where you'll be such a big part of the coaching search. What are you going to prioritize? What are some things you're looking for in the next coach?
We're looking for someone to build this the right way and not think that, we've got to produce 10 wins or whatever next year. That'd be great to do. And we see teams like the Patriots and the Jaguars flip it. I've always kind of thought that you're never as good in this league as you think you are, and you're never as far away as you think you are. And we're just going to go in open-minded. The work has begun upstairs this afternoon, and I've got to get back up here in a little bit and keep going. But we're going to prioritize, whoever's the best coach for the Las Vegas Raiders is who we're going to hire. And we're not beginning with the end in mind. And we want a meticulous build that will set us up for years of success in the future. And we have a great opportunity to do that with everything that we have out in front of us right now.
Two questions. What do you think ultimately happened this year to lead to where you guys ended up, number one? And secondly, what's the status of the assistant coaching staff? Are they being brought back or were they let go as well?
Yeah. Obviously we didn't win enough games early in the year. Sometimes I go back to the Bears game where we're 1-2 and they're 2-1. And we turned it over 4 times. We got a kick blocked, and we really had that game won about 3 or 4 different times. And it's kind of been my experience where that kind of win can propel you, or that one can kind of sink you. And I think we all know how the season went after that. We got a couple of our guys hurt that were big blows to us. But listen, those are just excuses. We just didn't perform well enough. We didn't play well enough. We didn't do the right things consistent enough to win games. And you are what you are. We're 3-14, and we've got a lot of work to do. The other part of it was about the assistant coaches. They're all currently under contract. I met with them a couple hours ago, and we talked through the next steps, but they're all currently under contract right now.
What are some of the traits that you and Tom have that you believe will help you collaborate together to move the football operations forward in a positive manner?
I think people sometimes misunderstand mine and Tom's relationship. We played together 1 year at Michigan, and then we didn't talk for 20 years, and then he came to Tampa. And so, but what really resonates with Tom and I think, is our shared vision of what football is. And a lot of it goes back to Michigan. I think I've talked about this a little bit, but just the idea of work ethic and accountability and discipline and a team built on really the team. It's kind of runs through my head, the team. I can see it written on the walls at Schembechler Hall and see Bo Schembechler saying it. And we see football similar. We don't see it the same. We have plenty of discussions and disagreements, and I'm not afraid to tell him that. I think that's kind of why he likes me. But I do believe that we see things similar, and we've both had a lot of success seeing it that way. And I think we know what we're after, and it's up to us now to go find it.
Hugh Myers, Raider Nation Radio 920. Now that you have a year under your belt and you kind of know what you have and what you don't have, what is that shared vision that you and Tom have putting this team together?
Well, it's about team before self. It's about discipline. It's about accountability. It's about work ethic. Winning is fun, but it comes at a price, and it is required every day. Otherwise, this league is far too competitive, and he's felt it. I've felt it. You can feel like you're close, but if you're off by a couple different things, you can end up at 3-14. And we've got to put a process and a system in place that demands the best of our players, of our coaches, of our entire football operations, and really the entire building every day. And I've been here a year now. I've got to know MD, ownership. I know what the expectations are. I've got to know the building, I think, really well. And we've got a plan in place, and we're gonna start working on it. And the goal is constant, meticulous improvement so that this organization and the Raider Nation can be proud when they walk into Allegiant Stadium.
John, obviously this wasn't the season that anyone anticipated for Geno Smith. What is his status at this point, and could you envision him coming back next year?
Yeah, Gino's under contract for next year. We did that because when we traded for him, we liked him. You know, I'm not going to get too far into the future right now. I'm day by day, but he's one of the guys that's under contract. He's a quarterback. He played some good football this year, and you know, we'll make those decisions going forward.
I know Q just asked what you learned about the organization over this year. Maybe what did you learn about yourself? And you know, you dream about this job for a long time. You get on it. I'm sure you didn't picture this season being your first one, but I mean, what did you learn about yourself along the way?
Yeah, I don't want to make this about me. To answer your question, I'm okay in this space. I'm okay with it being uncomfortable. You know, my life has been ups and downs. I've been rocked to my core personally, and I know I'll be okay. And you just get up every day and you take one step at a time and you keep going and you show up and you work, and you know you can make gains every day. And you know, I think we have a big mountain to climb, but we're not trying to do it all in one day. And steady success, leadership, and just show up every day will get us a long way. So I don't know if you totally know that until you go through this, but.
John, I was wondering, going back to Brady, do you envision kind of like his involvement to increase moving forward, whether that is not being in the building or whatnot? Like, how would you, because I know in the statement it says close collaboration in all football operations. Just, I was wondering, how would you describe his role moving forward after this year?
Yeah, I know you're kind of on this. I talk to him a lot. You know, he's aware of what we're doing. I don't bore him with the mundane, you know, transactions or all that. But any big decision, I've talked to him about. Any vision, I've talked to him about. He's a great resource for me. He's a great partner in this for me. And I would be not doing a good job and be a fool if I didn't talk to him. You know, he's been supportive of me. He can't be here every day right now, but I promise you, I talk to him a lot, and he and I are on the same page.
Sorry, I know he was mentioned about sustained success. How important would stability be for that, to achieve that vision, sustained success? Since, you know, this organization has been dealing with coaching changes year in, year out. Just how important would stability be in terms of achieving that goal of yours?
I think as the NFL goes, it's important, but this is a largely unstable world we live in. Even when you're good, you have instability because your coordinators take off on you. I mean, there's a couple teams that were great last year and they lost some really good coaches, and it hasn't worked out as well for them this year. So we're always battling every year. It feels like every game, every week, every year you're battling. And so, you know, it'll be built organizationally. We want to define what it means to be a Raider. We want people that are excited to be a Raider. We think that this is an exciting job. And we want people where it means a little bit more to be a Raider. And I think when we can find that, we can find those people that are dying to stay here, dying to come here, dying not to leave here, then, you know, that success with some stability will be created.
John, you described this as a massive opportunity. Could you just speak a little bit more on, you know, if done the right way, the impact that the right head coach and a, you know, first overall draft pick can have on the future of this franchise?
I mean, the league is littered with, when you get the top pick right, those guys are franchise-altering players. You know, there's probably no more important hire in an NFL organization than the head coach. They're the daily guy. They set the vision. They set the cadence. They are what touches the players every day and demand excellence from players. And the players are the ones that have to go out there and do it. And the more good players you have and the better person at the helm that you have steering that ship, you know, my experience is the more successful you are. And, you know, if you look at, are there two more important hires in an organization than a quarterback and a head coach? I think we probably all would agree that those two men usually steer the ship, and that's out in front of us right now.
Some coaches, I know they're under contract, but have they been given permission to look for other jobs at all? Is that?
I don't want to get too deep into the conversations that I've had with the coaches. They know where they stand.
Over the last couple of weeks, seeing a lot of these younger guys that you brought into the building that you either drafted or brought into free agency, seeing them play, you know, how excited are you to continue to see them develop, but also how important is it to you not only bring in more players, but retain a lot of the guys in the building as well that you feel are best fit?
Yeah, I'm proud of the rookie class. It wasn't easy for them. They battled and they got better as the season went, and I think that showed up over the last couple of weeks. But this is the biggest offseason of their careers usually. Guys have a chance to take a massive jump, and if they don't, you kind of wonder why, and a lot of times it's pretty telling. So, you know, they got to they got a massive opportunity that they got to attack this offseason too, and I'm going to spend some time over the next couple of weeks talking to all those men. We've got 10 more draft picks that we have shots this year to try to load it up with more young players. And yeah, I mean, we don't want to let good players leave our building. That's happened around here. You know, I was in charge last year when a couple good players left the building, and you know, it's one of the things I learned. You got to keep our good players here. And you know, we were talking about it this morning. Just you look around the league, there's some former Raiders that are playing good football somewhere, and I got to do a better job in that world.
John, quickly, just you mentioned building and climbing back up to the top here. I'm curious, when you look at this season 25, were you happy with how the rookie class was developed? Is there anything different you would like to see moving forward?
I'm not real happy right now in 3-14. You know, I would just go back to I'm proud of those guys for them competing, and I think they're the right kind of guys and they're about the right things. And my experience has been when you add the right kind of people to an organization, whether it's scouts, analytics people, wellness, players, you'll be okay. And we'll just keep trying to do that with players too.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Appreciate you all coming.
All right, so John Spytek just spoke. A couple of my takeaways, how accountable he was for the record and his job. Even though they did not retain Pete Carroll, he owned it right there at the presser.
That's right, for sure. And I think the overall theme and message is to try and find like-minded folks who understand how important it is to be accountable. More importantly, as a football player, do your job. Right? We want to find players, enough players, to just do your job. So if the backup is in, he's able to execute and do what he needs to do to be able to get the job done. And those little small details are the small details that eventually win and lose football games. We just didn't have enough guys who were able to step in when these guys were injured or banged up, and enough to be able to do their job correctly.
Also, a big takeaway for me is what he said about the remaining draft picks that are here.
Yes.
He expects something more out of them.
Yeah.
So this is a big offseason. He's going to sit down and talk to those players, and he wants more out of them because that's part of his first ever class.
Yeah, without doubt. I think when you're a first-time GM and you're able to draft those players, you want those players to pop. You want those to have significant plays in the course of the season. And he mentioned also some of the players who got away. And, you know, as we're all football fans and we've seen some of the players who have worn our colors over the past couple of years are still playing football in meaningful games, those are the situations where, as a GM, he's like, hey, I need to get better at retaining those type of football players who are helping football teams win.
You know, a couple of questions about Tom Brady's role going forward, and John answered that, I think, to the best of his ability. He's not going to be in the building every day. He's a broadcaster. The playoffs are underway. He's got his responsibilities with Fox, but he made it clear that he talks to them all the time whenever they make a decision. I think the media had the right to ask those questions, and we'll see how often he's around going forward, but his impact will be great here.
And this is the first time, you know, for Tom Brady also to be in this position, and all great players and great personnel people find a way to get better after years. So this is his second year, and he'll be much better this year than he was last year. And he's going to take all the situations that he's been in, and he's going to try and refine them just like he's done on the football field. So I have no doubt that Tom Brady is going to do what he needs to do to make sure that the advice he gives and the players and the coaches that he is looking at have the same type of desire and will that fit what the Raiders want to be about.
Let's bring in our All-Pro, Lincoln Kennedy. So, Lincoln, that was the GM, John Spytek. Your thoughts?
You know, so many times we see in instances when hiring and firings go that owners release the head coach as well as general manager. This time they decided to release Pete Carroll and retain the general manager. And with that being said, now the falls on the responsibility of John Spytek to find the next head coach of this team. So now we at least know how the division of power is going to go down and what's going to trickle to the deciding the head coach and the assistant coaches and the players from that point forward.
Yeah, Big Link, a lot of talk about the offensive line in that meeting there, you know, so we know that's going to be a critical area. We know the decision-making process now. How do you think they go about fixing or remodeling the offensive line?
Well, now it comes on to the evaluation process. I think, honestly, EA, you can't put the carriage in front of the horse. I know that there's a lot of decisions to be made player-wise, but first you got to get a head coach in, and you got to understand what the head coach's philosophy is. If you go with an offensive-minded head coach, you got to see what his structure or his philosophy is to know what players can best, ascertain that and be that player for that type of system. With that being said, this team needs a lot of players, needs a lot of help. But there were also a lot of players that played on prove-it contracts, as we kind of call it in the business, EA, where you're in it for a 1 or 2 year deal. So the evaluation process also has to go there. There's a lot of work for this staff, however they determine to be. It has a lot of work in front of them and a lot of evaluation before they even get to the draft process or the combine process and evaluating the up-and-coming rookies before they add to this team.
Lincoln, I'm interested in potential coaches because what John said there was very interesting. I think he's going to hire a coach and he's going to let him coach.
Yeah.
He's just going to say, you're the coach. And he also talked about tying that coach potentially with a quarterback. So we look at some of these coaches, Lincoln, and you're always really honest about offensive coach versus defensive coach. You were an offensive lineman at the highest level. You had offensive and defensive coaches in your career. Looking at this list of some of the names here, are you leaning more towards the offensive side of the ball or defense with a head coach?
I'm leaning more to the offensive side of the ball because with the Raiders having the first pick, I know they're not going to pick a defensive end. It's just that simple. I mean, you got Max Crosby, and you're not going to go after – there's not that defensive end, that star that's out there that says, oh, my gosh, we've got to get it. And I've always thought when it comes to evaluating, especially for the first round, there were 4 positions that were worthy of top 5 picks. It's quarterback, it's franchise tackle, it's shutdown corner, and it's rush end. And I don't see unanimously, and I haven't done all the evaluation for the college athlete, but I haven't seen anyone that stands out unanimously about that. Obviously, this team needs pieces in all parts of its game, in every part of its game. But I think leaning and looking at that list right there, guys, and I know there are other candidates out there, I think I would be more inclined to lean offensive-minded than anything else.
And offensive-minded, but you still have Ashton Jeanty, you have Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
So do you think the coach needs to fit into a box where, hey, you're going to utilize a tight end and be a running type of attack guy? Or do you think if he's a passing West Coast guy, you just change the personnel to go with what the head coach wants?
There has been so much turnover of personnel, and John Spytek alluded to it during a press conference, let go so much talent that has gone elsewhere and succeeded. I think it would be ill to let any talent go that you have on this roster, be it a Brock Bowers, be it a Michael Meyer. I wouldn't let him go as well. I think he's a good player. You got Ashton Jeanty. You got pieces on this offense that you can complement with one another if you have the right system. Now, I've never been a big fan of my head coach calling plays, be it offense or defense. With that being said, I would like a team manager. But because this is such a young and impressionable team, what we have on paper, and obviously with the addition of possibly 10 new draft choices, this will be a really young team that needs to be molded and folded into the way of the National Football League. I think you need a manager. With that being said, I think you need someone who has head coach experience. Again, the candidates out there, it's up to the John Spytek and Tom Brady to figure this out. But the candidates out there have to be capable of doing all that, whether it's creating or competing with the side of the ball or creating a total team atmosphere. I thought that's what they were trying to achieve with Pete Carroll, but he's done after one season.
Let's talk free agency. I'm excited about it, along with the draft, the #1 pick overall. The Bears went out and got 2 free agent offensive line starters, and it worked.
Yes.
Okay, they worked in a big way. We saw the Patriots, what they did in the draft with their offensive line, but keeping players here, very important. I don't think a lot of the players are going to be retained. I don't. I think that they're going to go out and use the resources to bring in better players, but there are some players here that popped. Eric Stokes jumps out to me, okay, what he was able to do. Booker came over, and they made a move to get him. Caillou played well at times this year where he popped along the way, but Link, I'm a believer of talking to you and being on the post game with you, but the offensive line and free agency will be a priority to get proven players who have already been developed, maybe have a Pro Bowl or two, and you talked about you might have to overpay for one or two of those players to come in the building.
Well, again, it goes back to where you decided head coach. And like I said, JT, we talked about this extensively. I can't put the carriage in front of the horse. I know the horse is those play callers and those main guys, but if you don't have that offensive line, you're not going to do anything. You can't evaluate Ashton Jeanty. You can't evaluate whoever you have at quarterback. So you have to take care of that offensive line. And I promise you, with the cap space that the Raiders have, because of supply and demand, they might overpay for one or two guys. That's probably going to happen. And you come to me in a couple of months and say, we paid for this guy, and I might think of you, look out the side of my eye like, well, that's a little bit, but you need it. You don't have anything else. The cupboard is bare. You have to address the offensive line. So with that being said, supply and demand, go out there, find the guys that are going to fit your system, however you decide. Once you get a head coach, once we get an offensive system, if we maintain or retain this defensive system, be able to keep guys that were able to excel at that, that's how you evaluate a team, and that's how you put a team together before the season starts.
Link, we need some guys, free agency-wise. I don't care what system. We need some guys who can play. Now, the draft a little bit differently, right? So you have all the evaluators and the guys who are going to develop these young football players. Obviously, yesterday I think we passed for under 90 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, so inside. It wasn't like we're in Green Bay or anything.
No.
So I'm pretty sure we're going to be looking at a quarterback sometime here in the next couple months and to be able to break it down. But other than the quarterback, draft-wise, what other areas of the football team do you think are 2 to 3 in those rounds of the draft could be?
Offensive line, obviously. We talked about that. Other than quarterback, I think you need to address the wide receiver position.
Yeah.
I also think you need to address the safety position as well as the linebacker position. So there are a number of positions on this team. That this team does not just need one player with that top pick that's going to put them over the top. They need a number of players. So, there's always that argument, well, you trade back and access more picks if you can. It comes to the evaluation process. And I go back to what I said earlier, guys. First, you establish the coaching staff. Then you have the evaluation process for what you think this coaching staff needs in order to succeed. So, I mean, you leave it in the hands of your coaching staff to make the choices for players along with the system that can be conducive to their style. And that's the way you truly evaluate the talent pushing forward.
The biggest void with the organization since Derek Carr came in as a rookie is quarterback.
Certainly.
Every fan knows that. You got an opportunity to take the quarterback, number one. If not, you could trade that pick and get a boatload of picks.
Yeah, you could.
A lot of picks. That's the offseason. Are you grabbing a quarterback, or are you moving out and you're getting 3 first-round picks where you're going to get 2 offensive linemen, maybe a starting safety? I like the quarterback because I think the quarterback on a rookie contract with Brock Bowers' contract and Ashton Jeanty, you have the triangle of young players that can be good. Now the process comes, the evaluation of the quarterback. These two play each other this week.
They do.
You want to get something going in Raider Nation?
Everyone's
You want
gonna
a
be out
topic
there.
on the Raiders next Monday? If one outplays the other, Lincoln. If one outplays the other. If Moore throws for 340, and God forbid Mendoza throws a pick 6 or whatever, it shouldn't change everything. It's one game.
It's one
There's
game.
going to be
That's
an
right. You're right.
evaluation with Tom Brady and John Spytek at the quarterback position with other quarterback gurus who are going to be brought in the building, Link, to give their opinions.
Well, when it comes to the quarterback and the quarterbacks we showed on that list a moment ago, you have to be mindful that we don't know if Dante Moore has declared he's going to come out of the draft.
Yeah, you're right.
So you don't even know if he's going to be available. So you don't know if you have to evaluate his performance to see if he might be your first pick. More importantly, as I said a moment ago, it's not one player the Raiders are missing. They need multiple players. So depending on your evaluation process with your hire of your head coach, depending on the philosophy of your future offensive and maybe possibly future defensive coordinator, depending on how things happen, then that has to be where you grade, and that's how you have to analyze these possible players. Also, they have to be available. If they're going to stay in school or they're going to want to continue in the transfer portal and not come out, then you have to take them off your list. You have to keep moving. It's a very heavy and lofty process in that evaluation. You do have some time, but you guys know how this season revolves, this year revolves, because football has evolved to year-round, 24/7. It's going to be right on us right now.
Yeah, you're right about that. One of the things that whoever comes in here as a young player is going to have to deal with is this division.
Certainly.
I mean, we have some of the best coaches in this division, some of the best players in the National Football League in this division. What do you think about this division and how it has turned so fast past, seemingly, where you had the Chiefs for 10 years that dominated. Now all of a sudden you have a young quarterback and a new coach in Denver who are on top of our division.
Well, it's rarity that you have such a dominance like the Chiefs have. I mean, the Patriots had it in their heyday, but it's a rarity. And now you kind of see, I like the parity that is in the NFL. I've also liked the parity that is in this division. It's ever changing. You have to evolve or you're going to get swallowed up and forgotten about. And I think a lot of times a lot of Raider fans think that we have been forgotten because you see the success of the Broncos this year. You've seen the recent success of the Chargers. And, of course, you talk about the dominance of the Kansas City Chiefs. Look, they still have a lot of notable players. As far as I see, Patrick Mahomes still in Kansas City, and we know the run he's had, future Hall of Famer. You know, you still have ability in with the Chargers and Harbaugh and his crew, and more importantly, you see the rise of the Denver Broncos, depending on their run behind their young quarterback. I've believed in today's system that the best way that you can maximize your objective with your young players is see that first contract. So you got to get it right when you draft these guys. That's why I've always said there's no development. You can't sit around and wait. You got to put those guys out there to see what you have. More importantly, when it comes to this division, how can you be competitive? Well, it depends on your philosophy. I remember when Gruden took over, he wanted to have an offensive power to where you score. It's almost like arena ball. Team that had the ball last will most likely win because the fact that Kansas City Chiefs offensively were running up the score. Then you see more so today the defense. Look at the defense of the Denver Broncos. Look at the defense of what the Chargers had. You know, it's more of a defensive side of the game that's steering it. So depending on your philosophy and how you look at it, there's ways that you compete, but you got to have the players in order to do it.
Thank you, Lincoln. Great work. There's going to be a lot of breaking news. We always count on you. Thanks so much.
Anytime, brothers.
The great Lincoln Kennedy.
Yes.
It's very interesting. You could look at what the Raiders want to do in free agency, but I like what you said. You look at that division.
Yeah.
You got to go after that division, and then the rest of the AFC. I'm encouraged by what two teams did in the last 2 years. Washington was a 4-win team. They got Jaden Daniels. They went to the NFC Championship game. And then the Patriots were a 4-win team. Raiders beat them week 1. Look at all the games they won as they're the 2 seed. And then Denver. We beat Denver 8 in a row. They couldn't win in Vegas, and now they got the bye
They were a
week
doormat
and
for
the
us.
number 1 seed very quickly.
Yeah, for sure, JT. And we look at those things. What are the differences? Is head coach change, quarterback change, guys who kind of work the system, and they found their guy who was able to help their football team win. Bo Nix, a young quarterback, but you looked at him at the beginning of the season, the fourth quarters, man, he played like a superstar in the fourth quarter. So coach had a lot of tremendous amount of respect for him, for that quarterback. So I think we're getting on the right page as far as getting a young quarterback, hopefully, and getting a coach who's dialed in with him, and then bring on that defense.
You played with Reggie White, one of the greatest of all time, Charles Woodson, great players. You know what happens when you add 1 or 2 elite players to an organization. Sometimes it happens in the draft. You get Charles Woodson, you get Tim Brown. Other times it happens in free agency. We were able to bring you over in free agency and your impact. Rod Woodson, one of the greatest Raiders to come in via free agency. So this, to me, the term you always hear is threading the needle. John Spytek and Tom Brady need to thread the needle. It almost has to be perfect. As we take a look at the Raiders draft picks here and what's going to happen here going forward, those are a lot of picks. And some picks are more important than others, like the one at the top. And then if you look at the 2nd round, 3rd round, and then the 4th, there'll be some compensatory picks coming into. The Raiders have the ability to get a bunch of good players. When John said 10 picks overall, that's nice. How about the 10 picks equaling 6 great picks? And a Hall of Famer told me recently, don't worry about the first pick, worry about the draft class.
The class.
And that stayed at home with me because the first pick should be a good player, should be a great player. But what about that entire draft class?
And it reminds me of a conversation I had 1998 with John Gruden. And I was going on kind of my free agency tour and came to the building in Alameda. And he said, hey, we love to have you here. We know what kind of impact you can have. And then we're going to match you with the young Heisman Trophy winner out of Michigan. And not knowing, you know, who Charles was and what he was going to turn out to be, I just thought that was a really great snapshot of what he wanted his football team to be about. to be about athleticism, but the ability to have a veteran kind of teach a young guy what it's about to be in this league. And from that moment on, we had enough veterans and young players in those couple of drafts that we were around to really build this football team and had a really good run.
Well, they also sent Willie Brown to pick you up at the airport.
That's right.
Right? You
That's
sent
right.
Willie Brown
Yeah.
to go pick you up at the airport.
Yeah,
They knew
yeah.
what they were doing. As we
That's
look
right.
at the improvement that's coming around here, this is very critical for the Raiders and Raider
Look at
Nation.
that.
Look at the improvement and then start looking at the coaches who went with those jobs.
Yes.
And I'm a Pete Carroll guy for his legacy, obviously. The Niners played a last place schedule and feasted on it. Mike Vrabel, look at the turnaround, 14 wins.
Young quarterbacks, JT.
Ben Johnson, and then Liam Cohn, who was probably in the mix. But then Pete Carroll comes along, and you don't hesitate on Pete Carroll. For everybody who wondered why it didn't work, Pete Carroll was available, a great coach, but some of those other offensive coaches were pretty good too.
I think a lot of those coaches, though, JT, when they looked at our organization and you have a choice between a young quarterback like Williams, or we really had a question mark at our quarterback. So if you're an offensive coach, you're like, hey, I'm going to have an opportunity to build this young quarterback. So I think that's really one of the markers that we didn't get some of those coaches. And now we have the number 1 pick. So we have an opportunity maybe to get that young player with a coach who really wants to mold him.
Highs and lows. The Raiders beat the Chiefs. What a great way to start off the new year. But Pete Carroll was not retained, and we both have great things to say about Coach.
That's right, without a doubt.
It was great to us. You go back with him a long way. We wish him well.
We do. We wish him well. He's a great man. He's going to be a Hall of Famer.
No doubt about it. For Eric Allen, I'm JT. Raider Nation, keep it right here. YouTube, all the platforms, and especially Raiders.com. Thanks for watching Raiders Roundtable.